Welcome to this tactical analysis of the Manchester City versus Brentford game. We're going to have a look at how Manchester City's 2-3-5 morphed into a 3-1 midfield, how they tried to attack the back post and how Brentford frustrated them, as well as briefly touching on Manchester City's counter-attacks, Brentford's counter-attacks and Brentford's deep build-up. Starting with this scenario in the 12th minute, with Manchester City able to escape down this left-hand side from John Stones' throw. This being versus Brentford looking to press with narrow positions towards the touchline to make it difficult. And now we've got the 5-3-2 of Brentford setting up. We've got our midfield covering across towards this near side. We've got John Stones inverting into his right CDM position, as well as also Cancelo playing at this point in somewhat of an inverted left CDM position. We've got Gundogan making his signature left-hand side half-space run, Foden starting to come inside, and Mbeumo and Tony looking to drop so that they can help out their midfield. You see the continuation of Tony and Mbeumo dropping. The Brentford midfield looking to try and cover back across after moving towards that right hand side. We've got Gundogan playing as that second centre forward, Foden coming inside from his left wing position, John Stones continuing in his right CDM position, and Cancelo starting to walk towards his left wing position. Of course, De Bruyne is looking to play in his favourite deep crossing right hand side half space position. Note also here how Jensen is looking to try and put some pressure here on De Bruyne, but occasionally it'll be on John Stones. The idea is to try as best as you can to lock down this right hand side half space, prevent Manchester City players from being able to play their preferred through ball or crosses from this position. De Bruyne resists his temptation to whip in across from this right hand side deep position and instead chooses to come inside and try and combine here with Haaland. Foden has made a run from his left hand side, looking to try and potentially run towards his right hand side by stepping over the ball. Again, here we've got Cancelo moving out towards that left wing. And note also the fact that Manchester City forwards are positioned so that they could attack the back post if De Bruyne had chosen to play that ball from deeper. Also, we've got a counter pressing position here being set up by Aymeric Laporte with just Akanji as the sole centre back. Foden, in his rush to try and get towards his right hand side, accidentally stops the ball getting into Haaland, allowing Onyeka to be able to regain possession for Brentford. Before we move on, just note the width provided by Cancelo as well as also Bernardo Silva. This is something that Guardiola reiterated to his team constantly throughout the game. And you're seeing part of the benefit of that here in the space that Foden is looking to attack, because Rico has pulled out wide to try and defend Bernardo Silva, somewhat exposing his centre-back partner. And here Onyeka and Jensen are looking to try and start the counter-attack. You see Mbeumo and Tony running far side. All this while we've got the likes of Bernardo Silva and Rodri coming to try and put some counter-pressure on. Against all this counter-pressure from Manchester City, Brentford look to play that long ball, just as they did with their long goal kicks. They try and avoid a scenario where Manchester City are strong here with this counter press and look to play over it, beyond it, into their runners, whether that was a wing back or therefore we've got continuation of the play. Brentford have had a throw in. They're looking to try and push their wing backs higher. They've pushed their wide centre midfielders higher and are gambling on succeeding off this set piece. With a bit of skill and a bit of luck, Brentford are able to force a 2v2 here far side for Onyeka and Mbeumo, from Tony pulling out into his favourite creative possession, this left hand side. Manchester City are able to deflect that, they regain possession, and then we see here De Bruyne starting the counter-attack with the likes of Foden and Erling Haaland leading the charge, eventually culminating in this De Bruyne shot which is blocked. But this is a good example of how Manchester City counter-attack into the space left behind by Brentford when they sought to commit plays up the pitch. Here we have Manchester City's 3-1-6. The numbers are just illustrative really. Note John Stones playing in his right CDM position. Cancelo no longer playing as an inverted fullback in what would be a 2-3 otherwise, and pushing out into that left wing position, allowing Foden to narrow inside so the Manchester City have a lot of targets for when they whip in across. And then here near side we have De Bruyne playing deeper so that it's difficult for the Brentford midfield or defenders to be able to get out to him. He's able to whip in across or play a through ball. Brentford midfield also are trying to do this, pushing out to try and engage either De Bruyne or Stones, to at least put some level of pressure on them and not allow them to be able to easily pick out a player in a more dangerous position. So here we have both Cancelo and Bernardo Silva holding the width for Manchester City, something that Guardiola was constantly trying to reiterate to the team. They needed to try and pull apart the Brentford defence, try and stretch them, try and force those defenders to pull wider, creating space for runners, whether that was the forwards of Manchester City or late runners such as John Stones here. This is later in the game, so Manchester City were trying to be more attack minded, which is why we have here John Stones looking to push up as high as possible. Alternatively, it could have been Rodri as well, push up so that Manchester City have more players in the box to try and contest across. Also notice how the Brentford midfield and defence are dropping in unison, anticipating that cross towards the back post, and then also how Mbeumo is tracking his player here. So there's also Tony has dropped quite deep, because with the Brentford midfield having dropped as far as they have, it becomes an issue on the edge of the box if Manchester City pull the ball out here rather than into the box. So Mbeumo and Tony dropping helps to somewhat alleviate that problem. Instead of whipping in across, Rodri decides to pass out to De Bruyne. So we see the Brentford midfield and defence look to push out, Mbeumo looking to try and put some sort of pressure on the ball. They can't entirely stop De Bruyne playing the pass, but by getting as close as he has here, De Bruyne is forced into playing a ball that he probably doesn't want to play, and he eventually goes into Raya instead of into John Stones, who's looking to try and make an underlapping run here to intercept this pass. And then from that, Raya, the Brentford goalkeeper, plays a long ball here into Tony with Mbeumo and the near-sided wingback Roslev gambling that he'll win it. Conversely, if you look at the positioning of the Manchester City players, it looks like they don't anticipate him winning it despite the pattern of the game. And so now the Brentford players have been able to progress the ball into this right hand side channel. The far-sided Brentford players are looking to gamble. So we've got that here with Rico, as well as also our midfielders gambling that these near-sided players will be able to whip in a ball for them to contest. And again, the Manchester City players aren't anticipating that. So if this dual near side is won by the Brentford players, there's potential for there to be a big problem here for John Stones on the far side. Against most throw-ins, teams will press narrow, preventing this sort of scenario ever developing. But Brentford utilised the fact that they'd had a free kick a little bit earlier to keep their players high, and then use the throw-in into Raya to create a diagonal to that back post for them to, in essence, recreate their goal kick, but 40 yards higher up the pitch. So now instead you'll have a player contesting the ball back post and then headering it across for someone else to contest centrally. And with that, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this Premier League content, consider watching our other Premier League analysis as well as our Champions League analysis, or alternatively some of our women's football tactical analysis. And with that,